There are moments in life when everything within us aches to answer back, to strike, to prove, to defend. We are creatures who cannot bear silence in the face of insult, who cannot resist the instinct to wrestle with every shadow that dares to move against us. Yet the voice of God whispers a sharper truth. Do not react, for victory is already yours. The world tells you that triumph comes through loudness, through assertion, through the sword drawn in haste. But heaven's wisdom runs deeper, slower, quieter. The real strength is not found in the clenched fist, but in the still heart that knows its outcome is secured. When you react in anger, you lend power to what was meant to pass like smoke. When you let bitterness drive you, you let your enemy write the script of your story. But if you stand still, if you refrain, if you choose not to react, you show faith in a victory that has already been declared. The battles of men are fought with weapons, but the battles of God are settled by truth. And truth, once spoken by Him, does not need your defense. It is a seed that grows silently, unseen, yet unstoppable. Consider this. Every insult thrown at you is smaller than the destiny laid upon you. Every opposition is temporary, while your inheritance is eternal. The clamor of critics fades like the cry of a bird in the night, but the voice that has spoken victory over you is everlasting. If you react, you step into their arena, where the rules are chaos and the prize is emptiness. But if you refuse to react, you rise above. You show the world that you are not driven by the winds of insult, but by the breath of God. Victory is not an event waiting in the distance. It is the present reality of those who trust Him. To not react is to declare that you believe this victory is real. It is to walk through the storm without shouting at the thunder, to sit at the table of your enemies without trembling at their glares. The greatest victory is to let God be your defender, for He fights in ways unseen, and His triumph is certain. When you refuse to react, you are not weak. You are stronger than those who rage, for you have chosen to rest in the certainty that the outcome is already written. Silence in the face of provocation is the loudest proof of trust in God's victory. Silence in the face of provocation is the loudest proof of trust in God's victory. There is a wisdom hidden in silence that few understand, because the world teaches us that to remain silent is to be weak, to stay quiet is to be defeated, and to hold back is to lose ground. Yet the truth is often the opposite. To remain silent is not weakness, but confidence, because it shows that you believe God is already working for you. When you do not need to answer every insult, when you do not feel compelled to fight every battle, when you can stand still while the storm rages, you are declaring to heaven and earth that you know the victory belongs to you already. It is a victory not gained by human effort, but secured by divine promise. The instinct to react is strong, almost natural. Our hearts pound with the need to respond when we are wronged. Our pride rises when we are misunderstood, and our minds craft countless arguments to prove ourselves right. But the louder our reaction, the more we reveal that we doubt God's hand in our lives. To stay silent in such moments requires deeper courage than shouting ever could. It is not the silence of fear, but the silence of faith. It is the stillness of a soul that has learned that God Himself is a better defender than any word we could speak. Silence in these moments is not empty. It is filled with the weight of trust. Think of a soldier who stands tall on the battlefield while others are scrambling. His calmness unsettles the enemy more than any sword he could swing, because his composure reveals confidence in a power greater than what is seen. That is what silence does for the believer. It unsettles those who expect you to fall apart. It disarms those who long for your reaction, and it demonstrates that you live by a truth higher than their accusations. Silence becomes a shield that speaks louder than argument because it shows your heart is anchored in victory already promised. This kind of silence is not passive but powerful. It is the choice to let God speak when you will not, the decision to let Him fight battles your words could never win. When you choose silence over reaction, you remind yourself that the verdict is already written and the outcome already sealed. Your quiet becomes a declaration of faith, and your restraint becomes a weapon sharper than retaliation could ever be. When you refuse to react, you declare that your outcome is already secured. When you refuse to react, you declare that your outcome is already secured. The urge to respond is often born from a fear that if we do not defend ourselves, we will be misunderstood, forgotten, or defeated. But those who know their victory is already written do not live in fear of perception. They walk with the assurance that God has already prepared their path, and nothing said or done against them can overturn His decree. Choosing not to react is a public testimony of private confidence, a bold declaration that you are not swayed by what others do, because your destiny is untouched by their actions. Reactions often bind us to the power of the moment. When someone provokes and we immediately answer, we allow them to control our rhythm, our mood, and even our peace. But when you stand firm, unmoved, and unshaken, you step out of their grasp and rise into a higher perspective. This is not a denial of emotion but a mastery of it. For you are declaring that the source of your confidence does not lie in the approval or opposition of people, but in the faithfulness of God. The absence of reaction is not silence born of weakness. It is strength born of certainty. There is something profoundly unsettling to those who expect your anger when they find instead your peace. They discover that their arrows have fallen short, their schemes have failed, and their words have no power. The quiet strength of your refusal to react becomes a sermon louder than any reply, proclaiming that you are anchored in a victory that no man can strip away. Each moment of restraint is a stone laid in the foundation of faith, proof that you are not living for the applause of today, but for the crown that has already been promised. To react is to fight for ground you already possess. To stay calm is to remind yourself that the battle is over even before it began. The cross has already declared victory, and your life is an unfolding story of that triumph. The one who refuses to react is the one who knows the outcome cannot be changed by temporary conflict. In every silence, in every calm response, in every choice to let go rather than lash out, you proclaim with unshaken certainty that the future belongs not to those who provoke, but to those who trust. True strength is not in retaliation, but in resting on the certainty of God's triumph. True strength is not in retaliation, but in resting on the certainty of God's triumph. The world admires those who fight back, who defend their pride with sharp words and quick actions, but such strength is fleeting. It is a fire that burns hot, but soon fades to ash. Real strength does not come from proving yourself to others, but from knowing that you need not prove anything at all. It comes from the deep assurance that God has already spoken victory over your life, and no voice of opposition can cancel His decree. To retaliate is to fight battles too small for the destiny you carry, but to rest is to rise above them with a quiet confidence that your triumph has already been secured. When a heart is anchored in God's triumph, it is no longer controlled by the shifting tides of insult, betrayal, or injustice. You may feel the sting of their words, but you are not mastered by them. You may notice the schemes against you, but you are not driven to fear. Instead, you rest, and in that rest lies a strength the world cannot comprehend. It is the strength of one who knows the outcome before the battle even begins. This rest is not laziness, nor is it surrender to defeat. It is trust. It is the deep calm of faith that refuses to waste energy on fights already won. Those who retaliate often reveal their insecurity, for they act from the fear that silence means losing. But those who rest reveal their security, for they act from the knowledge that God's promise cannot fail. This rest does not mean you are indifferent to the pain of being wronged. It means you refuse to let that pain shape your response. It means you will not exchange your peace for momentary satisfaction, nor your destiny for the thrill of revenge. Resting in God's triumph is the highest form of courage because it requires you to step back and let Him fight in ways you cannot see. The battlefield of life is filled with noise, but the one who rests in God's triumph becomes a calm voice amid the chaos. That calmness speaks louder than any retaliation, for it demonstrates that your foundation is unshakable. The world may call it weakness, but in truth it is the deepest strength. The strength of surrender to divine certainty, the strength of faith that stands without flinching, the strength of a soul unmoved because it knows that God's triumph is final.